even if you deputize the firefighters and paramedics and all the public safety, there are not enough people in this country to enforce legit martial law. It's just not possible.
Yeah, countrywide.
I think when we were talking about in our pre-show stuff, I think the numbers I have is between the military and law enforcement is 3 to 4 million people, right? Like the United States military couldn't get Baghdad under control, and it had 500,000 people in Baghdad, pretty much. You couldn't get that under control, the entire conflict, right? So the thought that they're going to be able now, technology is rapidly improving, and you're moving towards a time here, probably in the next 10 to 20 years, when they will have drones that can patrol, and they could have armed drones. Like the technology thing, I think the government's starting to tip its hand. It's trying to push for this stuff with the rising prices and all this stuff and heading down that direction. If they wait another 10 to 20 years, the Second Amendment won't even matter. What are you going to do against a bunch of drones? Nothing.
Yeah. You join that resistance group and they got one of those suicide drones and just game over.
And that's another thing, right? Like right now, I was watching some stuff earlier today, and they're talking about using like AI and predictive intelligence to troll everybody's social media accounts to see who's going to be suicidal and who's going to go do, maybe shoot up a school or do something like that. AI is getting better and better. They've done studies on Google. Google can predict what is wrong with you better than most doctors can predict because of all the little symptoms you go in, you search for in Google, right? So the AI and stuff that's coming out, they're going to be able to they're going to be able to identify so many people ahead of time who's going to be their problem children that, look what Germany did back in the day, right? The Night of Long Knives or something like that, where they went around and they killed anybody who they thought might be a problem later on from their own organization. Yeah. Kind of thing. Right. So, it's crazy with the way technology is heading, and we're heading towards a nexus where, I don't know, again, we talked about before where in the movie, The Terminator, it was always assumed that the machines were just running everything. Right. Well, what if you have some people that are actually running those machines?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where we're headed. I mean, we're going to look back in 20 years and go, remember when we had to carry cell phones? Now we don't even have to carry cell phones and shit like that. It's crazy to think about. With martial law, though, I found this article, and it's a pretty good article, and I linked to it below. I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but it goes through what martial law is, who can declare it, why the president can't unilaterally declare it, and all that. And I've got a few slides that I took from this article that bring up some good points, and then we can discuss these as we go. But this first one here is, what is martial law? And I think as preppers, we probably already know this stuff. But the interesting part is actual martial law. There isn't really a specified definition. It's typical politics. But first it says the armed forces sometimes assist civilian authorities with non-law enforcement functions. Second, and far less frequent, the military assists civilian authorities with law enforcement activities. And third, on some occasion, the military has taken the place of civilian governments. That happens very rarely. I think, when was the last time? The last time I remember anyway was something large scale like that. I'm not talking Katrina and all that stuff, but something large scale like that was, I think, Pearl Harbor out in Hawaii, where it was, there were actually arrests made by the military and stuff like that. Am I missing something, or do you?
I'm looking up right now if the LA riots had martial law. I don't recall.
Okay. And that's another aspect of it too. It can be federal, and it can also be enacted by states and all of that. But let me put this slide back up. This one says, and then I'll go to the next one, which talks about what they can do. But usually, but not always, the term martial law refers to a third category, which describes a power that, in an emergency, allows the military to push aside civilian authority and exercise jurisdiction over the population of a particular area. So basically, this is the politicians giving the power to make arrests, to do that stuff to the military. And this probably happened to some extent in Katrina and stuff like that, like you were just talking about. It would take a lot for the government to full scale give away this power because, and we talked about this a little bit the other day. I don't think if they were to enact martial law large scale, I don't know that there's any coming back from that for them. If it gets to that point.
I think at the point where we're at right now with the level of, just with the level of people being upset on both sides, that if they went down that road, you wouldn't get it back. It's like you mentioned, earlier about, well, if they go start collecting up guns, dude, like how, they might have to go to several million homes, but it's going to get to the point where there ain't going to be any of them left to collect up the guns. Right?
Yeah.
And again, they have gone down this, you mentioned Pearl Harbor, right? Don't forget, our benevolent government went and locked up every Japanese person pretty much in the country and put them in internment camps. And I know when I was a kid and when even not as a kid, driving up from Los Angeles, going up to Mammoth Lakes, you would drive by Manzanar where they had an internment camp, right? Like just big wood huts where they put all these Japanese people. And it was up in the Sierras. It's a cold place. It's not like a great place to be. So it's not like they kind of did the whole Native American thing, right? Oh, hey, we got this special land over here just for you. Yeah. Right. And so, our government's done it in the past. I wouldn't doubt them to do it in the future. Look at some of the lockdown. I read I wish I could remember the tweet from Michael Malice earlier, but he was like, talking about, oh yeah, they won't come for your guns. They won't lock you down. They won't do all these conspiracies have been proven true here in recent times. So, I think the problem that they'll have with martial law is I don't think President Biden could say martial law like that's just a bridge too far for that guy. He could barely, say his name and find his way out of the bathroom. But yeah, 6 months or maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have laughed about this. Now I'm not laughing about it anymore. Like we're inching closer and closer to that possibility of happening.
Well, and they could skirt it too, like you were just talking about. The Emergency Powers Act allows them the ability to do a lot of the same things they would do in a martial law situation. So they don't have to necessarily say the words and get that outrage and all that. But they did it during COVID. They did a bunch of things with the Emergency Powers Act during COVID.
Well, don't forget they in the National Defense Authorization Act, I think it was 2008. I'm not exactly sure which year it was, somewhere around 2008. Right? They put in there that the U.S. government can use the military against terrorists anywhere that terrorists are. And they set it up so that way the U.S. government has the ability to define whoever they want as a terrorist. So it's not like they're, it's again, they're calling a lot of U.S. citizens terrorists these days. Calling us terrorists pretty much. Yeah. If you're watching this or you're listening to this, and us by just nature of putting this show out, I imagine we are on their terrorist spectrum somewhere, right? So that gives them the ability now, because of the National Defense Authorization Act, to target you with military assets. Again, gets back to the NSA. An Air Force general runs the NSA. They're out there scooping up data on people. Odd, but it goes down farther because there are other units in the military, right, that do high-end surveillance, units that most people, 99.99% of the people have never heard about, that do high-end surveillance. Well, they work in the country.
Yeah.
The CIA has field offices in our nation. Why? What? Like, they're not supposed to be used on U.S. soil. And, it's, they work as liaisons. They do this, that. Yeah, right.
It's all these laws. Show
hands of everybody who we have the FISA courts that have been abused, right? Where they go and they lie and nothing's happened. We now know that Hillary, we knew it before, but the evidence is now out there and in the open that the Hillary Clinton campaign ginned up the entire Russiagate thing. Right. Got that all going. No one's getting really hemmed up too much on that. Like one thing after another. So it's whatever rules they want to play by is the rules. So
Yeah.
They don't need to declare martial law with that. They already have the ability just to, Dale and Brian, you're bad. You're the domestic T word. So we can use sources, resources that aren't supposed to be used on the U.S. soil. We can use against you because we've declared you to be bad.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying in the beginning, typical politics, where they figured out ways to skirt the system and all of that stuff. Brandon said in the chat, unless martial law is part of the plan, I could, you know what, with all the crap that they're doing and all the with them not giving a crap, I mean, maybe that is part of the, hey, these are the steps we have to take, and inevitably we're going to have to cross this bridge, so we got to figure out how we're going to have to handle this situation. So wouldn't surprise me.
Think about the food shortages we're possibly looking at, right? I just read, I was reading yesterday, DEF fluid, right? Diesel exhaust fluid that goes in diesel trucks, because the government wants diesel fuel is by and large super clean these days. It's not the same old gunky diesel fuel we used to burn back in the day, but you have to use DEF now. If you don't use DEF, your cars don't, your diesel vehicles don't run anymore. Well, DEF is made from urea, right? And urea also makes fertilizer. And when I started going down the rabbit hole, reading up on that yesterday, you have countries like India and all these other countries that are, and Russia is a chief exporter of this. They're not exporting anymore. China's not exporting anymore. India is shutting it down. So all these countries are shutting down. That's what the fertilizer price is going. So not only are we having diesel fuel that's going crazy in price, the DEF fluid's going crazy and is starting to get limited. So you look at the diesel fuel, the food short, everything that's compounding the complex disaster that we talked about. What's it going to look like if the food shortages keep getting, more intense, or food becomes more and more in short supply? What are you going to do in Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, all these cities? It doesn't take much to get a riot going, as we've seen. So what's the solution to the riots? Martial law. Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing, and then I want to talk a little bit about how we can things we should do if we do find ourselves in a martial law type situation. But this right here talks about, and this is that political shit that I was talking about earlier, where martial law is constrained by the Constitution and subject to judicial review. So even though they still have to abide by the Constitution, they can still arrest you. They can still do what they want. The only difference is that they'll have to answer for that later on. So it's almost that type of thing where,
or not.
Yeah. It's almost like that. Hey, the Constitution still applies, but right now get in the back of our truck. You'll have your day in court thing. So are you gonna survive long enough to have your day in court? So it's almost ridiculous that yes, your rights still do apply, but not right now.
No, but see, I wouldn't even say that, man. I think that's a total falsehood, because the Constitution doesn't really apply anymore.
Yeah, right? That's true.
The FISA courts, all this stuff that they have done, the abuses they've done. I find it interesting that people that go down the rabbit hole of the whole stop the steal thing from the last election. Yeah, you can definitely get into Fulton County and, the pipe broke. Oh, the pipe didn't broke, but they kicked everybody out and they pulled. Yeah, you can go down that road, but you don't even have to play that game with them. Literally, the stop the steal now should be all about the fact that the Hillary Clinton campaign got Russiagate going, and then they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story, right? That's how the election really, in a lot of ways, was stolen, because that stuff came out. It would change the election. And here, that the Hillary Clinton campaign did the illegal stuff. That Hillary Clinton erased, was it 30,000, 20,000 emails? Right? She was out there. What other people, like when I was a senior person in the diplomatic security world, people would get routinely fired for doing stupid stuff on computers, like downloading some music to listen to because they were tired at night while they're pulling guard shift. They'd lose their security clearance and get fired. Well, Hillary Clinton didn't lose any clearances, right? So there's all these rules that are out there, and the Constitution is a set of rules that they don't obey and they don't follow unless it suits them. So trying to say that, wow, the Constitution is there, I don't even know if that applies anymore, man. They make up the rules as they go. And when they violate the rules, George Bush is still walking around a free man. And literally, the interesting thing with the Russiagate, right, was So what did Hillary Clinton campaign do? They created a story. They fed the story to media outlets, which then ran with the story and reported on the story. And then they went before the FBI and all these other people and said, look, they're reporting this must be true. Yeah. Right? They're the ones. That's the same thing. Dick Cheney did that to get the Iraq war going. He fed stories to the New York Times. And then when he went before like the different bodies that they're trying to gin up support for the war, he goes, look what the New York Times is reporting. Because he's the one who fed it to him. So, I mean, we've gotten into legal conflicts. We have congressmen that are, doing crazy stuff with their not paying their taxes. They got congressmen doing all kinds of stuff. Right? Nothing happens to them. So does the Constitution really apply to them anymore? I think it's a fantasy land in a lot of ways. I hope that we go like some of the stuff we're doing. I know there's some case. I just saw something today where they're talking about some concealed carry stuff going up before the Supreme Court and stuff. So I hope that backs up the Second Amendment more, but I think it applies when they want it to, and it doesn't apply when they don't want it to. So the idea that we have some sort of protection, I think in a lot of ways is when they decide not to have that we don't need that protection anymore, they're going to pull the trigger on it. They don't care. Yeah, what they're doing now. I mean,
the Constitution is just like a list of obstacles, like a stone in the middle of the river. They just need to figure out a way to get around it and keep moving. And
and when they don't, when they can't get around it, they're just going to raise the water and go right over the top of it. They don't care.
Yeah.
Not one bit. I mean, look at what's happening with we all know that they could get the cost of the fuel to go down right now if they wanted to. They could turn on fuel production again. They could get rid of the federal gas tax right now, suspend it, but they don't. It's because it's not within their goals, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, or like I've said a bunch of times, it's intentional. And maybe not even just the United States. I think globally, in the Western world, a lot of this stuff I think may be intentional. Highly likely, in my opinion anyway, that it's intentional.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching.
Absolutely. Just as a reminder, you can help us defeat the censors by liking, subscribing, and sharing this or any of our videos. Don't forget to click the link below and visit the website. Over there, you can listen to any of the older podcast episodes and also get on the email list.
And best of all, you can help us give the finger to both the apocalypse and the censors alike.